Welcome to Life Stories, where the quietest voices carry the loudest truths. What would you do if the company you gave your life to erased you at 37,000 feet? No warning, no thank you, just a single email mid-flight that ended everything. But what if that wasn't the end? What if it was the moment a woman who had been overlooked, underestimated, and overshadowed decided to rewrite the rules in silence? This isn't just a story about corporate betrayal. It's about what happens when loyalty is weaponized, when talent becomes a threat, and when the person they tried to erase becomes the architect of something far greater. Stay with us because by the end of this video, you may find yourself questioning what you've accepted and realizing what you truly deserve. Let's begin. The email landed at 2:41 a.m., exactly 6 minutes after the Rio skyline dissolved into darkness. The cabin lights dimmed, casting long, sleepy shadows over the polished pods of business class, and somewhere in the back, a flight attendant clicked her heels against the galley floor. Harper Lane blinked at the screen on her laptop, unsure if the text was glitching or if her exhaustion had finally broken her. But the words were real, plain, clinical. Subject, termination notification, effective immediately, her name, her title, and then the line that vacuumed the breath from her lungs. Your employment with TitanSphere Global has been terminated. Access revoked. You are no longer authorized to represent the firm. There was no call, no explanation, no acknowledgement of the 10-day, 3-continent gauntlet she just completed. Nothing, except a digital bullet with the CEO's name at the bottom. Carter Wells, the same man who'd toasted her in London 2 weeks earlier, eyes gleaming over champagne, and said, "You're the spine of this company, Harper. Without you, it snaps." She looked around. Everyone else was asleep. High-ranking men curled into ergonomic cocoons, their faces relaxed behind eye masks and privilege. Harper's reflection stared back at her from the laptop's darkened glass. Eyes alert, mouth frozen, the echo of betrayal sinking into the silence between jet engines. But what chilled her more than the email was how unsurprised she felt. The ache wasn't rage, it was recognition. She reached under her seat and pulled out a second laptop, matte black, encrypted, unbranded, one that had never once touched a TitanSphere network. She opened it slowly, as though revealing a wound she'd hidden even from herself. It blinked awake, a soft hum in the dark. The desktop wallpaper was nothing but a simple, elegant logo. Luminar. Most people build escape routes after the fire. Harper had built hers long before the first spark. 6 weeks earlier, she had stood alone in a glass-walled boardroom on the 38th floor while 3 executives fell apart over a collapsing $400 million contract. The Zurich account, an infamously demanding conglomerate, had walked mid-negotiation. Legal was flailing. Finance was blaming compliance. And the VP of strategy had gone pale, mumbling something about reassignments. Harper didn't wait. She stepped forward, pulled the draft from the chaos, rewrote the entire deal's spine in 23 minutes, and called the Zurich lead directly. By morning, the contract wasn't just revived. It was expanded. They clapped. Carter raised his glass. Someone murmured rumors of a promotion. It never came. A week later, the whispers stopped. Her inbox grew colder. And during a catered lunch just outside the boardroom, Harper overheard 2 board members chuckle. "She's too sharp. Walks into a room and every guy shuts up." "Yeah," the other replied. "She's not EVP material. She's more field ops. Like she was some tactical asset to deploy in emergencies, never to lead. Just clean up and vanish before the credit arrived." She could have quit right then. She didn't. She booked flights to Tokyo, London, and Rio, one last run to close the largest strategic migration deal in TitanSphere's history, Trident. It should have been her crowning moment. Instead, she sat 37,000 feet in the air, reading her own professional obituary. And yet, she smiled. Because while TitanSphere thought they had cut her loose mid-flight, they had no idea what she had been building midlife. Luminar wasn't a project. It was an answer. Harper thought of Ivy Wells, Carter's daughter, newly promoted to VP of International Strategy, the same Ivy who once exposed client data in a botched demo. The same Ivy Harper had quietly cleaned up for, spinning the leak into a beta-phase display anomaly no one had known. Harper had taken the PR call herself, to protect Ivy, to protect the company, because she still believed loyalty meant something. until 3 days ago. That was when Harper opened the Trident pitch deck, expecting to finalize her talking points, except the author's name was no longer hers. It was Ivy's. The structure, the framework, the words, hers. Just rephrased, just stolen, no heads up, no co-authorship, just erasure. And Harper had done nothing. She hadn't reported it. She hadn't confronted Carter because she knew exactly what they'd say. Are you sure this isn't a misunderstanding? You sound emotional. That word emotional always appeared when a woman asked too many questions near power. So instead, Harper swallowed the betrayal, flew to Rio, and delivered the deal. And now they had fired her. Except the documents they thought she'd lost access to, they were already secured. Every draft, every client note, every signed letter of intent. Because 6 months ago, Harper had quietly filed a risk protocol request with legal, citing multinational compliance redundancy. Approved, archived, duplicated, untouchable. She leaned back in her seat and opened Luminar's private portal. Her fingers hovered over 3 client names: Kenji Watanabe at Zuratel, Marlene King at Corcom, Luis Moreno at Novalink. All of them had signed with Titansphere under Harper's guidance. All of them had once told her the same thing in different languages. We trust you. Not your company. You. Harper drafted 3 identical emails, each with the same 4 words. The door is open. She hit send. Have you ever built something that someone else claimed as their own? What would you do if your silence was mistaken for weakness? By the time the plane touched down, Titansphere had already begun to fall, and they didn't even know it yet. Next, Harper steps into a world where clients are watching, trust is currency, and revenge isn't the weapon. Clarity is. When Harper stepped off the plane at JFK, the city felt different. Not colder, not louder, but sharper. Like every honk, every passing voice, every gust of wind off the East River was reminding her of who she now had to become. She didn't go home. She went straight to the old hotel in Soho she used between flights, the kind of place that didn't ask questions and kept rooms ready for regulars who paid in silence and anonymity. She dropped her suitcase, peeled off her heels, and sat at the edge of the bed for a long time, watching the pale morning light drift across the hardwood floor. Then she opened her laptop and refreshed the dashboard. They had all responded. Zuratel had scheduled a one-on-one for Friday. Corcom's head of legal had logged into the new Luminar portal and uploaded preliminary revisions. And Novalink, Luis Moreno's office, had not only confirmed the meeting, but added a note. We prefer to work with those who show up before they're asked. It should have felt like triumph, but it didn't. It felt like a line being drawn in a room she didn't mean to burn. And that terrified her more than she cared to admit. Because the truth wasn't just that she was building something new. It was that she had already become something else, someone she never thought she'd have to be. Strategic, silent, and willing to operate entirely in the gray. That afternoon, she met Dana Cross in a corner booth of a coffee shop in Tribeca, their voices barely above whispers. Dana, her former legal partner, now Luminar's stealth compliance architect, brought a folder, not digital, not traceable. They're scrambling, Dana said without preamble. Carter called Marlene twice this morning. No response. Ivy sent a follow-up about Zurich. It bounced. They know something's wrong, but they don't know where it's coming from. Harper kept her gaze steady. Good. Dana hesitated, then placed the folder on the table. But you need to see this. Inside were screenshots. Memos. One of them was from Titansphere's internal communications, dated 3 days before Harper's termination. It detailed a strategic personnel transition, naming Ivy Wells as interim lead on Trident, noting that Harper's departure was mutually planned. Harper's breath caught, her fingers stiff on the edge of the page. Mutually planned? They're rewriting the narrative, Dana said gently. They're painting it like you stepped down, that you wanted to pursue other ventures, and Ivy's taking point as the one continuing your legacy. Harper felt the heat rise, not rage, but humiliation dressed as disbelief. She had given them her years, her sleep, her voice, and now they were not just erasing her. They were repackaging her into a ghost they could control. And yet, part of her hesitated. If she responded, publicly, emotionally, she'd become the narrative, the angry woman, the unstable former exec. But if she stayed quiet, if she let the lie sit, what did that say about her worth? About truth? Dana leaned in. You built something real. Luminar doesn't need noise to survive, but people deserve to know who actually held the pen. Later that night, Harper found herself staring out the hotel window at the skyline she used to think she'd conquer from inside a boardroom. Now she realized the boardroom was too small. She didn't want the table anymore. She wanted to build the floor beneath it. But first she had to face something harder than Titansphere, harder than Ivy or Carter or corporate betrayal. She had to face her own restraint, because this wasn't just about redemption. It was about authorship. She reopened the folder, read the memo again, then opened her encrypted line to Miles and Eli, her co-architects. It's time, she typed. Let's go live. Full deployment, full clarity. The next morning, Luminar's portal was no longer hidden behind logins. It was public, not flashy, no marketing campaign, just a clear announcement with one line in bold beneath the logo. What we build belongs to those who build it. 3 hours later, the calls started coming. Carter left a voicemail. I think there's been some confusion. Let's talk. Ivy sent a message through a mutual connection, asking for a meeting. Maybe we can align on communication, keep this cooperative. But Harper didn't respond. Because what they still didn't understand was that this wasn't personal anymore. It was structural. And once a structure is cracked, it doesn't need a hammer. Just time, gravity, and someone brave enough to walk away first. Have you ever stayed silent while someone else told your story? What would you risk to finally reclaim it? And just when Harper thought she had seen the full shape of betrayal, a familiar voice from the past resurfaces, with an offer that could either solidify Luminar's future or shatter it from within. The knock came just after midnight, soft, measured, the kind of knock that didn't come from strangers. Harper didn't flinch. She had been awake, seated in the armchair by the window of her suite overlooking the river, her laptop closed for the first time in hours. New York buzzed faintly below, but up here it was just stillness and the whisper of her own doubt. She opened the door, and there he was, Luis Moreno. No security detail, no assistant, just him, the man who had once told her across a table in São Paulo, I trust you, Harper, but not your company. Now he looked older, not in years, but in eyes. He stepped in without a word and handed her a folder. Zuratel and Corcom are in, he said, but there's a complication. She took the folder and flipped through it. It was a proposal, clean, aggressive, and painfully familiar. Titansphere had made a counteroffer, a merger, not to compete with Luminar, to absorb it. They're positioning it as healing the fracture, Luis said bitterly. They're willing to recognize your leadership, rebrand as Luminar Global. Carter steps aside, Ivy goes silent. Full control, on paper. But he didn't have to finish the sentence. Harper already knew, but it wouldn't be hers. It would look like hers, feel like hers, even say CEO Harper Lane on every letterhead, but the skeleton would be theirs. The walls theirs. The boards still stacked with people who once erased her name without blinking. She closed the folder and placed it on the table between them. Why bring this to me now? Because it comes with a warning, Luis replied. They're reaching out to investors. Rumors are circulating. If you say no, they'll come harder. PR war, lawsuits, whisper campaigns. They'll frame it like you're unstable, vengeful, dangerous. Harper stood by the window, the city lights threading through her silhouette like strands of memory. I've been called all those things before, she said quietly. Luis stepped forward. This isn't about what they call you. It's about what you've built. Is it worth protecting? Even if it means compromising? She didn't answer. Not right away. After he left, she sat back down in the armchair and stared at the folder again. Titansphere was betting on one thing, that power still had to play by their rules. That the only way for a woman like Harper to lead was to wear the crown they offered, even if it came laced with poison. She thought of Dana, Miles, Eli, all of them who had taken risks to follow her. She thought of the clients who had trusted her, not because of a logo, but because of the way she listened, the way she refused to sell half-truths. And then she thought of the boardroom she once sat in, the one where her name had been left off the agenda while Ivy posed for press. And still, Part of her wanted to say yes, not for power, for proof that after everything, they had finally come to her, that she wasn't invisible anymore. But just as that thought formed, another voice echoed louder. They don't see you. They see a fire they want to control. So instead of replying to the offer, Harper walked into Luminar's office at 6 a.m., coffee in one hand, silence in the other. The space was small but growing. Bare walls, wires still coiled in corners, bonsai trees from Kenji Watanabe resting in the light. She walked into the boardroom where Dana and Miles were already waiting and placed the folder on the table. They want to merge, she said. Dana stiffened. Miles narrowed his eyes. They're offering everything, Harper continued. Control, brand, my title, my terms, but none of us would own it. Not really. It's an inheritance with strings. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Dana said, We're not here because of what they gave you. We're here because of what you built when they gave you nothing. Harper exhaled. She nodded. And just like that, the decision was made. That afternoon, Luminar released a simple statement. No grand language, just clarity. We believe in structures where credit follows contribution, not connections. We respectfully decline TitanSphere's offer and wish them well. The next days were war. Articles seeded doubt. Anonymous quotes painted Harper as difficult. Rumors spread about instability inside Luminar. But the clients didn't budge. Neither did the team. And then came the silence. The kind TitanSphere had never planned for. No press calls returned. No strategic pivots salvaged. Because the market had begun to see what the clients already knew. Luminar wasn't a startup. It was a standard. And Harper wasn't a rebel. She was the blueprint. 3 months later, she stood in Geneva where the International Tech Assembly was holding its annual summit. TitanSphere had a booth, empty, no keynote, no announcements. Carter had stepped down, Ivy had gone dark. Meanwhile, Harper was introduced not as a disruptor, but as a designer of new governance models for ethical tech. Luis Moreno joined her on stage. Kenji sent a message from Tokyo. Marlene stood at her side. And in that moment, Harper realized something she hadn't let herself feel in years. She wasn't rebuilding. She was remembered. Later that night, alone in her hotel room, Harper took out the folder Luis had once handed her. The merger proposal. She lit a single match and watched it catch. The flames didn't rage, they curled quietly, paper turning to ash. Her voice was never loud, but it had always been steady. And now, finally, the world had heard it. How did this story resonate with you? What moment hit you the hardest? Comment 100 if you felt this story spoke to something real. Let us know what country you're watching from. Share this with a friend who needs to be reminded they are not invisible. Thank you for watching Life Stories.